Hey guys, welcome to the video. My name is Oliver King, and this channel is all about talking about passive income sources like stock photography and stock videography, and also things like writing and publishing books. Today we're just talking about upping the quality of your footage so that you can sell it on stock agencies like Shutterstock or Pond5. So I'm just going to give you a few tips that you can use in order to kind of up the quality of your stuff and make sure that it's actually competing on the marketplace on these stock platforms. So let's jump right into the tips. And the first one that I got for you is to consider the market that you're selling to. There's an endless number of things that you can film, but not everything that you film is going to sell. So you want to consider the kind of people that are going to be buying stock footage from a stock footage website and the purpose to which they're going to put these. And these are generally larger companies that have some sort of industrial component in which they want to save time for themselves in a video making process by taking footage from one of these stock agencies to kind of fill the gap in the productions that they're making. This means that they don't have to hire models, they don't have to go on scene and shoot these things that you've shot. They can just borrow from the things that individual creators have gone out and filmed, and they can use that in their production. So when I go out and shoot stock footage, one of the things I consider is which industries have the most amount of money and which ones are going to be actually like purchasing stock footage. So some of the industries like the medical industry, the health industry, things like the energy sector like oil and gas, and the technology sectors, there's going to be a lot of these that are going to be interested in the videos that you make as they pertain to these ideas and these concepts. So if you want to make a lot of sales, and if you want to make sales from these kind of big corporate places that are going to be spending the money on stock footage, then you kind of want to lean into that market. You want to lean into these industries and these ideas that have kind of money in them. And so when you're filming, you want to have a general concept in mind and a general category that these things could fit, so that when people are looking for them, they can choose them and decide that, oh, this fits in my industry. I could use this to represent this concept or this idea that we're working on in our video making process. So you want to be able to create content that can be airdropped into these productions so that these companies can make use of the videos that you're using, and so when they license it, they can up their own video production quality, and it saves them time and energy, so that's why they're going to be purchasing from you. The second tip that I got for you is to include people in your footage, even if it's just you. Now when you're just starting out on Shutterstock and that sort of a thing, it's challenging to kind of have models and people in your photos, because if you're just starting out and you're just taking pictures of things, getting somebody to model for you isn't going to be kind of economically viable, because either you have to pay somebody for their services and then get them to sign a model release and that sort of thing, and that can be pretty challenging, or it can be time consuming, or it can cost you a little bit of money because you've hired somebody. So what you can do when you're shooting footage is you can include yourself in the videos, but you don't necessarily have to show your identity or your face when you're doing this. So I'll give you a couple of workarounds here so that you can kind of include yourself in your footage, but you don't necessarily need to plaster your face all over these video production things that people are going to be using your image on. So a lot of people will shoot in silhouette. So if you're standing on a beach somewhere and you have the sunset behind you, you don't necessarily need to like reveal your identity or anything like that. You can use a silhouette image of yourself and of your face and body so that nobody could actually tell what your identity is, but it's still going to make the shot a lot more interesting because there's going to be that people connection in it. Shots with people definitely sell a lot better just because they have a bit more versatility in terms of the market. People are going to be able to connect more with a video shot that's not just scenery, it's going to have that human connection to it. So I strongly encourage you to kind of put people in your shots. Another thing that you can do, and this is one that I've personally done, is to wear a ball cap and to turn your back to the camera. So this is still going to keep you in the shot, it's still going to keep a person in the shot, but it's also going to hide who you are as a person, it's going to hide your identity, so that's kind of nice. One of the videos that I sold was just me walking through a wind farm, and again, just wore a ball cap, I turned away from the camera so I didn't have to plaster my face on it, but it still had that human in the shot, so that it was a bit more interesting to look at. If it had just been the wind farm, I really doubt that it would have sold. So if you can include yourself in some capacity, it's definitely going to up the value of the shot, and it's going to add that extra little element of something's going on in the scene. Another thing that you can consider doing in this vein is just using your hands or some part of your body in the shot. So take for instance, if you wanted to take a shot of you working in a wood shop, or if you wanted to kind of show somebody making something, you could use your own two hands to be a part of the scene, but you don't necessarily need to have your whole face in the shot. You can just show two hands working on something. So that's a bit of a workaround to get away from getting a model release, but also having a little bit more of a personal connection with a human being in it, so you can just keep using yourself. The third tip that I got for you is to include dynamic movement and stabilization in your footage. Stabilization is a bit more of an obvious one because the more stable your footage looks, the more professional it's going to be. If you have shaky hand footage, that's just not going to be acceptable whatsoever to stock agencies. It will probably reject it in the contribution process, so it's not really a good idea to even waste your time submitting shaky footage. So one of the basic things that you can do is use the camera strap and your two hands to stabilize the footage when you're taking a shot. If you have optical stabilization in your lens or in your camera body, turn that on. That's going to add at least a little bit of an element to correcting the shake in your camera. And another thing that you can do is shoot in a higher frame rate and slow it down. You can slow the footage down and it's going to give you that smoother look. And if you're shooting handle and if you use all of those three things together, it's going to give you a lot more smooth of a shot, and it's going to kind of make your footage look a little bit more cinematic and a little bit more valuable and high production quality. In terms of dynamic movement, you can have a pan on a tripod. You can move around when you have the camera strap on you. And if you have a gimbal, that's great. A lot of people don't. They're really expensive tools, and especially if you're starting out, I don't expect people to. But I use a DJI Osmo Pocket, which is a great little gimbal, and it still shoots in 4K, so that's a phenomenal choice for me personally. Another thing you can consider doing is using something like a slider. So this one's actually just a manual slider. It's made by a company called U.S.A, and I've been pretty happy with it so far. Now, the difference between just a still frame shot stood on a tripod and a slider is quite big. You know, when you have a dynamic movement and you have parallax, which is the background moving against the foreground, it looks a lot better. It looks a lot more, again, high production value. So when people see that, they're gonna actually think that your footage is worth a lot more because it's got that extra little element of production. The fourth tip that I got for you is to retain the quality of your video data from shooting it to uploading it on the site. So video is usually measured in megabytes per second, and so the higher this number is, the higher quality or the higher overall amount of data you're showing at one time during the playing of your video. That's going to be kind of reflective of the overall quality of your video. For instance, if you have 50 megabytes per second versus 8 megabytes per second, there's just a lot more data and there's a lot more information in the one that's got 50 megabytes per second. So when you're editing it, when you're making changes to it, it's going to hold up a lot better. The footage isn't going to get all grainy when you have more information. So people are looking for things that have that higher bit rate so that they can make changes in post-production. So if you're able to maintain that from your initial shot through the editing process and then up to the publication part, if you're able to do that, then you're gonna have a greater chance of maintaining the overall quality of it, and then you're gonna be able to sell it to people because they're gonna be able to actually do something with your footage when they're trying to produce something themselves. The fifth tip that I got for you is to maintain kind of the technical aspects of your video and to just take a lot of care with this. And so one of the things that you need to consider is to keep your ISO low. If you're shooting in low light conditions, you wanna bring your own lighting setup, and you want to make sure that you can kind of keep your ISO below 800. I like to shoot around 400, and even if you have like a really dark scene, it's best to light it with your own equipment rather than blasting up the ISO, because you'll get excessive noise and that sort of a thing. The other thing is to observe the 180-degree rule, in which you shoot at a shutter speed that is double your frame rate. So if I'm shooting at 24 frames per second, which I'm currently doing, my ideal shutter speed would be 1/48. Now my camera shoots 1/50, so that's about the closest that I'm gonna get. So in order to get the highest quality out of my footage, what I'm gonna do is shoot at 24 frames per second with a shutter speed of 1/50. Now if I'm shooting at 60 frames per second, ideally I'd like to shoot at 1/120, but again, my camera shoots at 1/125. So that's the closest equivalent that I have. So you wanna maintain that while you're shooting, because it's gonna allow your footage to look a lot more smooth and natural and cinematic, and it's gonna give you proper motion blur and that type of thing. So just consider that when you're uploading your footage, because you don't want to have like a jittery, unnatural look about it. You want to make sure that it looks natural to the eye, so that the people who are purchasing it are going to see the value in your footage, and they're going to be able to determine that this was shot by an actual professional and is therefore worth buying. So that's the video for today. I really hope that you got something out of these tips. I hope you're able to use them in order to sell your own stock footage, and I hope it's useful for you for making a greater revenue source out of this amazing platform. So let me know in the comments down below if this was useful for you, or just kind of like some other things to consider that maybe I didn't mention in this video but you might want to share with other people. Also, I just want to say thank you to all the people who have subscribed and commented on the recent videos. It's been a lot of fun to start in this community and that sort of a thing. It's been something I wanted to do for a really long time. So I appreciate the feedback so far, and hopefully I can keep making great videos for you that are useful in content and tone. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.